I think I'm looking too desperately, but so far has not been fun. I should just stay home. If one thing really means one, this club